I'm Alcindo. I will be doing this security gateway introduction. This is the public one. I already did this before for some of our dealers or our resellers and also our distributors. So if you join that one, you will probably not see a lot of new things. I have added a little bit of information, but not too much. So I expect that you're seeing my screen, that you're hearing me, and I can just move on to the next slide. So we'll do a quick introduction. I will also elaborate a little bit on what a router, security gateway, firewall is, the differences between it, and that I'm also going to use the same things and about our device, etc. So first, this is how it looks. A 4-port gateway device. The idea is that we make a product that is without any complexity, so it's easy to configure. Stressing your IT per team less and improving the security of your network. So first, what's a router or a gateway? So a router or a gateway is a device that passes traffic between networks. A NAT or network address translation router can translate local private IP addresses to public WAN IP addresses. NAT routers are usually used because we use local private networks on our inside and want to connect those to the internet, which does not route any private networks, or at least it shouldn't. That said, a normal router like the first one or a gateway doesn't necessarily need to do NAT. So if you're talking about a router or a gateway, it's not implicit that it will also do NAT, network address translation. In most cases, we'll just talk about routers and assume that it's so, but it doesn't need to be. So next thing is a firewall. A firewall is something that could be inserted in an NAT router or a normal router, but it can also be a separate device. And what it does is inspect packets with rules like stateful inspection, access control lists, etc., to determine if packets are allowed to exit or enter. And even now, we can have it integrated in a device, a separate device, or a device like ours that can support both modes. It can be transparent. Next, we have a VPN router. Again, if you have a normal router or gateway, you may assume that it also is able to do VPNs and do firewall stuff and do NAT, but essentially it doesn't need to. A VPN router is just supposed to route VPNs from one side to another, and it can have all of the above, but not necessarily. Then the security gateway is a usually more capable version of all of the above, and with additional paid services often. Some of those names are used interchangeably and by me too. So I probably talk about firewall router, and in all cases, I'm referring to our security gateway, unless I say, well, it doesn't do such or so. There are also some other names that you might abuse, like customer premises equipment, which it can be any device that's connected between the internet and your devices. It can be something like a modem, media converter, etc. But often it is a router and can do NAT and maybe even do more stuff. And lastly, sometimes you come across internet access devices, which are usually NAT routers with voice over IP integration. So with phone or FXS ports. And by the way, if you have any questions, just put them in the question field and I will try to answer them or just refer to the next slides. So just remember, if I talk about router gateway, it's in this case, I'm always talking about a security gateway, our security gateway. So about security, if you want to evaluate security gateways, we usually use the so-called CIA security triad. And the C stands, first, most people, when they talk about CIA, think of one thing, I think of something else. But anyway, the C stands for confidentiality, that outsiders cannot read your stuff. This is for web pages, for instance, we do this with SSL and TLS, or using VPNs, for instance. Integrity, that's about not being able to modify or delete the packaged information without you knowing this. So this is usually done by checksums and sequence numbers, and by your stateful inspection firewalls. And lastly, the A stands for availability. Others cannot interrupt it. This is something that you can do by using multiple redundant paths, multi-one, or in the case of VPNs, by self-healing VPNs that will also route over the other ones if they're available. So keep these in mind if we're talking about all this stuff. So next, about our device itself, our ESG or EnGenius Security Gateway 510. Its main features are that it can do NET and VPN with some firewall functionalities, and it can be used as a transparent firewall. So secure VPNs for site-to-site or for clients, which will do our confidentiality and integrity. And our self-healing auto VPNs is also included, which supports your availability. Then we will have our stateful firewall with high throughput for integrity. And it can actually saturate our 2.5 gigabits ports. And lastly, we have our dual one ports for load balancing and failover, again for availability, and also that's part of the availability of our auto VPN. So we have we do have a local interface on our device because of chicken and egg problems. So if by default it will have the device set to both interfaces on DHCP and no VLAN tag. If that is your internet connection, then you can just plug in and it will work, and you do not need to even look at this page. However, for instance, in my case, if I connect to the internet, I need to do VLAN tagging, and I need to configure PPWE with a password. In this case, any password will do, but I need to put in something for it to work. So it is nice to configure this on the cloud, but if it doesn't connect to the cloud, it will not know this. So first you have to fill it in, and then it will be able to connect to the cloud. Of course, you need to have the same configuration also in the cloud, because if it's in the cloud, it's still set to the defaults, then it will overwrite it, and then it will immediately lose its internet connection again. So keep that in mind, that you do not want the chicken to eat the egg or something like that. And by default, load balancing is active. So if it's DHCP on both interfaces, plug it in, and you will have active load balancing. So after you did that, then you can configure it, and that's done using the cloud. So we have our cloud-based management. And with that, we can configure our ESG. Note that our ESG is not a replacement for the endpoint security in any way. You still need your Windows firewall, antivirus, anti-malware on your computers, on your servers and stuff like that. But it does allow you to manage your device from anywhere as long as it has internet connection. So when you have your gateway, compared to the old cloud situation where you have your switches, APs, and clients, you will have the gateway added. And important note here is there can only be one gateway per network. So you can have an organization with multiple networks, but it will only have a single gateway that you can configure. So there will never be more than one here. So if you have your organization, have your network, that network, you will only have that one device, that one gateway. If you want to have multiple gateways, you can always make multiple networks, but this is a design choice again, to keep it simple for everybody. When you select it or move to the end, you will see that you have a detail button that you can click on to get into the detailed information about your device. And here you'll have your information about device, firmware it's running, how the ports are connected, which is your public IP, your WAN IP, etc. You can also see your local area network, what you have on your physical interfaces, VLANs, stuff like that. And if you have any devices connected, so you can select these PLEs, and then I am faking it here. This is something that like you could have the clients, the MAC addresses, IP addresses, which interface they're on, and how long it takes for the lease to expire. So that was the quick overlook of how it's working. And then to configure it, first we go to the configuration gateway interfaces, and we have 3 tabs again. The first tab is about the wide area network. Again, this you need to configure the same as that you did on the gateway itself, because if you did not, it will override it with the defaults, and then it will lose its connection again. So keep that in mind. You can choose between routed and pass-through. I'm just going to talk about routed for most cases. So in my case, PPPoE, and with login, and I needed to do a VLAN. And by default, we'll have a load balancing, but you can put it to fail over if the second interface has a cost, like that you pay per megabyte, which might be the case for if you have a router that's connected to 4 or 5G, for instance. Or you can plug in a USB adapter for 4G or 5G backup. That said, that's an option. If you do not have this, you can use this as a primary. Lastly, we have dynamic DNS support, so that if you want to have, for instance, client VPN connections to your device, but the public IP address changes, then you can enable this to make the IP address follow the name of your device. So at the moment, they're still discussing about high availability, so that you can have 2 devices, and if one fails, that the other will take over. This is a answer to a question that is being asked. Another answer to the questions about the speed, I think I will have that later in the presentation itself. Let me see. Okay, one thing I didn't mark, the ISP bandwidth. Maybe the Ethernet speed is 2.5 gigabit, but your actual internet connections on only 100 megabits. You need to set up your ISP bandwidth correctly for the load balancing to work correctly. So about routed and pass-through. Let me move my face. So usually you just have routed networks, and we have different local area networks, all with their private IP addresses, and NET is done somewhere here, and the gateway will also do DNS, proxy, DHCP, and other services. So that is how it works by default, which is also supported. And it will check its firewall rules to see if traffic is allowed. And also its NET rule, of course. If you do something from the inside and ask the outside and it gets a reply, then the reply will be NET'd back to the client. So that's the normal stuff. Then we get the pass-through. Well, the pass-through is a little bit different. You will have a different NET router, or maybe not even an NET router, because you have a large public subnet, and then you can put in the ESG inline and have it do its firewall stuff, like the firewall rules. And well, we do not have it at the moment, but you could also think about deep packet inspection, or DPI, without you needing to do any changes. You just take out the patch cable from your router to your first switch, or in front of it, even sometimes, and you take another patch cable and you plug it in between. In this case, it will only do the firewalling. It will not do stuff like DNS proxy, DHCP, or other services. I will mainly focus about in NET mode here. So the next thing is about the local area network, the addressing, which you will only do when you have it in NET mode, of course. So you can change this stuff. Note that we have a one port here, which is grayed out. This is grayed out because it is not active as a LAN port at the moment, a local network. That's something that you can change. So you have P1 and P2 as your ports, and you can change this. You can enable only one to use this, and you can also enable use VPN for the auto VPN if you want to, and then press apply to configure that. You also have the DHCP page. So we have you can choose to run it as a DHCP server, and if we do, they have changed the naming here, but my screen dump still alt. You can reserve a range that is not used by the DHCP server. So actually I did something wrong here, and it will only use 201 to 254 instead of the 2 until 200 that I was intended to use at first, but they made it more clear. For the DNS servers, you can specify the name servers like I did, but you can also proxy the upstream DNS. So the device will get the DNS servers from the ISP, and then it will pass those on. Or actually, it will not pass them on. It will then be the DNS server and will proxy them. Then you can also use the Google public DNSs. So then it will fill in the 888 and 8844. But I choose a little bit different. You can also you also have a fixed IP list, and you can add MAC addresses, names MAC addresses, and set them to a fixed IP address so it always be the same. We also have some advanced settings. We can add additional DHCP options if we want to. There are some very common ones, but we can also do the custom ones. So by default, you have these 4 choices, but you can do the custom and support anything that you want. The next things are the captive portal, splash space, and bandwidth. These are exactly the same as that you will also see in the in our APs. So there's nothing different in the way it works, except this is centralized. All the traffic goes through the gateway, and you can manage it from there. So nothing new here. I will get to the VLANs later, I'm sure. So next thing we're talking about will be the purpose of the VPNs. So I personally see VPNs partially as a workaround a network address translation. So if you have 2 company networks and they all have public IP addresses and you have no NIT, you might be able to just address everything directly and put in your firewalls to make sure that only people from the one company public IP addresses get into the servers on the other public IP addresses. If you do not care about people snooping in your information, or the information the servers are using at TLS or SSL already, so it's already secure, you might use that. But yeah, in reality, most people have NET on both sides, so you need some way to get to the other side. And port forwarding, you can do that, but it has limitations. You only have so many ports to forward, and port redirection is not nice to do. So that's one thing. But the other thing, of course, is keeping it safe. Again, our CIA security triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So for site-to-site, go to configure gateway site-to-site VPN, and we can enable this. So by default is off, but you can enable it. We want to support two modes: mesh, so everything is connected to everything, or hub and spoke. Then there will be one which is configured as mesh, which will be central site, central one, fastest one, whatever, and the other ones will be spokes. And you can define which of your networks you can define. And as you can tell, I can configure VLANs and attach those to the ports if I want to. We will have a paid feature call for network traversal. It's not set as a gateway paid pro version here, but it is, or it will be. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you do not want it to do it the easy way, or you cannot do it the easy way because the other side is a non-EnGenius gateway, then we can always do it in the old style and do it the hard way by configure it correctly with the phase 1, phase 2, etc. So we support both AKA V1 and V2, and yeah, that's about it here. So at the moment, for the site-to-site VPN, it's all IPsec without and just that. I actually do not expect that we will use another way anytime soon, because this is the most common. For the client VPN, we will have a little bit more choice. At the moment, we support IPsec, but we do not have gateway clients or IPsec clients from ourselves. So if you need IPsec clients, you have to look at something like the Greenbow clients to make this work. But in the future, we will also support OpenVPN's SSL VPN. That's something that is coming. Then, well, I will go first to the port forwarding. For the port forwarding, you can edit those, add those, move the order if you want to. So you can set it to which public IP, protocol, enable, disable, LAN IP if you want to do that. The local port, the public port and local port, so you can do translation here. And to make it easy, you can also put in your allowed remote IPs here. So you do not need to go to the policy rules separately to, or actually you cannot even go to the policy rules separately to put in which devices, which IP addresses are allowed to come in through this route. So this will make it easier if you want to do a port forwarding. You fill in everything that's related to it in this single configuration. So I think I need to talk a little bit about the one-to-one NET. So the idea is that if you have a subnet, a small subnet of IP addresses, that you will be able to translate one-to-one public IP addresses, spare public IP addresses to internal IP addresses, plus which ports are allowed, etc. So again, it's made easy. I think I skipped allowed services. These allowed services are about if you are allowing ICMP pings and also remote management directly to your device from the internet. By default, it's both off, but you can change that. For the policy roles, it's important to note that the order can matter. So if you think the order is wrong, it is possible to move those around and swap them. Okay. If you need to add a rule, you can just put in source IP address and ports, destination IP addresses and ports, and allow or not. By default, their configuration is quite simple. You're allowed to, this is actually, policy rules are all for outgoing traffic, because the incoming traffic is much more about, yeah, at least for NET mode, you already did the port forwarding and any one-to-one NET for incoming, and for outgoing, by default, everything is allowed. So if you want to restrict people to only use port 80 and 443, for instance, to go out, then you can do that here. Then you will probably need to first do a allow rule for port 80 and port 443, and then a deny rule for everything else. Okay, so can choose some of the common protocols and make this work. We have a VPN status screen. Well, I didn't have any peers up at that moment when I made, but it will show your EnGenius peers, and also in the other screen you will have your third-party VPNs if they're up. We have some alert settings, and here you can see that we have some advanced pro things that you can do when you have the pro gateway thing. Basically, it will only give a warning. The cloud will only give a warning when the gateway is not is offline, according to the cloud. And it is important to note that even if the gateway is offline, it could just be that the gateway wasn't able to phone home in the interval that the cloud was expecting it, or there was some other issue with connecting to the cloud. Because the whole idea about the online offline thing of devices is that they need to register, whatever you want to call it, every about 5 minutes with the cloud, and then as long as they keep up connecting every 5 minutes, then the cloud will know that they are online. And if they skip, then the cloud will assume that there is an issue and give it offline. You will see this in the log, and for APs and switches, if they had some issue with connecting, sometimes you see them going offline and then coming online again. And then if you see them online, you will see that they have a long uptime, and then you will know that they just had a connection issue. Anyway, if you want these extra things, you need the Pro Gateway thing. Just like with APs and switches, we also have the auto upgrade thing that you can schedule, but you cannot skip. I should not forget mentioning our Cloud to Go app that we have it. You can do most of the stuff here with the gateway, just as you can with the the cloud's management portal. So it will be fully supported, so you can do a lot of stuff there. So I have lots of questions. So who needs this device? Well, people were asking for it, so we made it. Some of the end customers prefer to have all the devices, networking devices, AP switches, and gateways from the same vendor, so we can fulfill that wish. Customers are looking for a solution to manage their gateway from the same place as the cloud APs and switches. Maybe that's the same as the other one, but you want to have an easier way to configure with enough features, and that's also something we are trying to fulfill with this device. So it's most important thing is that it has 2.5 gigabit copper ports on it, and we support the standards things of the cloud. It will have some information there. So we have one PoE plus out port, and that's the last port. The port on, well, actually it's LAN 1, but it's the rightmost port. Which speeds does it support? Well, 10, 100, 1000, 2.5 gigabits is all supported. The power supply is a 54 volt, 1.2 amperes, that's 65 watt, and it's 55 volt because of the PoE stuff. There will be more powerful devices. I forgot to update it. It's a 610 and also a 620 that are coming, not a 520. There will not be any cheaper devices. We want to go up market. So how fast is the throughput? And then I get back to a question somebody asked at the start. These are the numbers that I got. 4 gigabits NET throughput. So you might be able to saturate, and almost a gigabit IPsec side to side. But these are under ideal circumstances. So ideal in the sense of packet size, ideal in the sense of latency. If the latency is larger and the packets are smaller, these numbers will drop. How many users can the device support? Well, in my book, the limitations are more about bandwidth and type of use. If you have people who are just chatting then you can support lots of users. But if they are going to upload videos and stuff like that and download those things, then a few users can already saturate the device, of course. One way to look at the number of devices that can support it is the number of DSP leases. I know that the largest subnet that's supported by our VLANs is a /19, which is 4K IP addresses. So I think that will be probably in the neighborhood of the number of devices that will be supported. But this needs to be confirmed still. I always said that if you use the USB dongle, you can use it as the only internet connection. There is a list, but it will follow. I haven't received it yet. Load balancing is supported. You can configure one of the wide area network ports as local area net port. Then you will not have any load balancing left. You will only have failover if you use the USB stick. The load balancing is only one type. It's just weighted round robin. And the load balancing does not support sticky links at the moment. At least I haven't heard, but it will be supported really soon. And failover, yes, supported in 2 ways. I found out that it does symmetric NAT, so the destination NAT that the ESG supports is port redirection, port forwarding, and the one-to-one NET as I showed. At the moment, hairpinning, NET reflection, net NET loopback, whatever you call it, that what you need to be able to reach your internal devices on their public IP address if you use port forwarding, port redirection is not supported at this moment. If you want to do stuff like that, please use a split horizon DNS to resolve the server to its right name. Are VLANs supported? Yes, they are, both on the wide area network and on the local area network. You can support. In the case of the outside, you have your Ethernet connection, and you can just configure it with or without VLAN tagging. In the case of your local networks, you can just add VLANs to the interface. There are 128 VLANs, and in this case, those are the local area network VLANs supported, which can be any ID from 1 to 4094. Can we use the same VLAN IDs on both WAN links? Yes, I have tested this successfully. However, I still think that if you have both one IP address from the same ISP on the same subnet, load balancing may have issues. So this is, I also tested this. Can you use the same VLAN ID on the LAN N1 and still have it separate? Yes, you can. This works. Kinds of VPN supported. IPsec VPN, site-to-site VPNs, IPsec VPN server for IPsec clients, Open VPN clients in the future. And yes, we can make it with others. Well, for the what message digest, encryption, etc. is used for the one-click VPN, I didn't get a clear answer about that, but it's all up to cloud. The cloud makes sure that all the devices have the same correct information. So we do not need to have too much, talk too much about that. The information is not visible. I assume it will be the same as the default settings that you have for the third-party VPN. And the encryption key is, or pre-shared key, whatever you want to call it, that is randomly generated. For the one-click VPN, if a primary one goes down and you switch to the backup one, then the gateway will update the cloud which is new IP, which is new public IP, and then the cloud will update all the other gateways with the new public IP, and then the VPN connections will be recovered. So it may take a little time, maybe up to 5 minutes, depending on when the gateways connect to the cloud to get new settings. We support SHA2. We support Diffie-Hellman 1, 2, 5, and 14. There will be auto-NET traversal function as a public function or a paid function later, and this should make it easier to connect to a gateway behind another NET router. But you can also already configure this manually. One of the questions that I also had is, can I create a VPN from an AP to the ESG? This feature is not available at release, but it will come sometime later. There will be a IPsec VPN client thingy built in the APs. I assume that will be a paid feature, by the way, for the APs, but I'm not sure. Hub and spoke supported, mesh supported, tunnels. The target is that 100 tunnels total will be supported. Site-to-site IPsec VPN tunnels, that is. Can routes be configured to route traffic over an existing VPN? I was told yes, but I still have to check this. Dead peer detection is also supported. There are some things that I guess I need to answer with no for now. IPv6 not supported. Packet capture streaming is not yet supported. Electrical curve encryption on VPNs not supported. UTM service licenses, these will come in one form or another in the future sometime. Policy routing, that is routing not based on destination but on source IP addresses, that's not supported. We cannot turn a USB Wi-Fi dongle into an access point. These are the things that I think that are unlikely to get, but maybe. Route public subnets without NET and not support OSFP, BGP. We will not have any EnGenius USB sticks, IPsec client license, or endpoint security licenses of antivirus, as far as I know. The hardware failover, I put it here, and later I got news that they were indeed considering it. Oh, I see one question about having more than one VLAN on the outside, on the WAN. No, that's not supported. You only have the one WAN that you can configure. So it is not like that you can put a stack, take a switch, push in multiple internet connections on that, and then stack them on on a single port. Maybe that would have been nice to have, but on the other hand, it would make everything much more complicated. And this is, we're trying to balance the how easy we make it with the functionality that we are offering. So it's at the moment, I also see a question about IGMP support. I have not seen that yet. I think I asked about it, but I didn't. I do not know So IGMP support at the moment, if you have IPTV that you need to pass through the router, no, that doesn't appear to be supported for now. But do ask your salesperson, of course. Yeah, in the Netherlands, that's true. The ISP, especially KPN, and all the parties that use their internet connection, they use three VPNs, a separate VPN for their for internet, for their IPTV, and for their telephony. Okay. So if you need any information about pricing and availability, please contact our sales representatives. The pricing for the devices is known. The availability is a little bit less known. We will have some limited numbers by the end of this month. They should be on their way, I think. I haven't seen an update yet, but the person doing logistics has a week off. So it's probably known somewhere in the organization, but just not by me. And like I said, the pricing is known. We do have a not for resale and a fair kit available, or will have it available, consisting of a pair of NHGs 510. The idea of having a pair is because that will be the easiest way to do the testing with the auto VPN. The pricing is set at twice the current price of the AP or switch license. That is what I have seen. Okay, that's about, is there an IP Gateway Pro license? Yes, it's separate, just like with the APs and switches. So you can have just the Gateway Pro license and not for the APs and not for the switches. About the things that somebody is asking about web filtering, intrusion detection service, IPS. So those are all under the UTM, Universal Threat Management umbrella. Those are, well, they are thinking about which they will implement and when they will implement these, and assume that if they are implemented, there will be additional separate licensing for those, separate from the Gateway Pro license. At least that's what I'm expecting. At the moment, we do not have any web filtering services in it. It's a pretty basic. We have the access control list that you can use. We do not have any web filtering. That said, if you're talking about web filtering, you can do web filtering in different ways. One of the ways that you can do it is just checking the DNS requests, and if the DNS request goes to somewhere that you do not want to have it, then just redirect to a IP of a server that will show, sorry, we will not, you're not allowed to go here. That's one way. That way only requires you to make sure that the DNS requests will run through your device. The other way is to do SSL inspection, or that all the SSL traffic is terminated in your device, and then made again from the device to the actual server. That is very resource intensive, so it's always going to be very slow. And additionally, in a situation that you do not have any control over the devices that people bring, it can be very hard. because they need to trust the certificate of your gateway. And if they do not, they will get a warning about a man-in-the-middle attacks. And even if they do trust your page, there are some web servers like the Google search engine that will detect that there is something in between, and they will pop up a message that there is a man-in-the-middle attack going on. So you will have to explain that too. Well, most of this subject to change and to be ordered. So at the moment, the benefits for the gate profiles are enhanced logging duration, diagnostics. You will have vouchers, just like with the APs. And again, just like with the APs, you will have more licenses available. Backup and restore, the VPN topology, the auto net traversal will be added there. And maybe some other features on the AP, and probably everything that is going to be added later, or at least if it's not on a separate license. One question that some people are asking is, can you use the ESG standalone, so with other APs and switches? Of course you can. It doesn't care about what type of APs or switches are behind it. It's agnostic. Just like our APs do not care to which kind of switch they are connected, and the switches do not care what brand of APs are connected or devices are connected. So you can use it with NSKI APs and switches, but yeah, those will not, of course, still not be managed by the cloud. They will need their own management. All the devices come with a trusted platform module chip, and these chips are used to store credentials securely, and keys and certificates and stuff like that. So let me see. I have one question. Is there a DNS server in ESG? At the moment, basically, it's just a DNS proxy. So there is no DNS server in the sense that you can say, well, everything that goes to EnGenius or that you can redirect something like alcindo.engeniusnetworks.eu goes to a certain IP address. It always will need to be in the public domain or in a public DNS server, and it will relay that to, or proxy that to, the devices. So if I forgot to or missed some question, could you please, anybody please repeat it, because I think I answered all the questions I had. So, and if there are some more questions, in any case, I don't think this is we have some pages. I think they are now all up. A landing page for the gateways. I think if you go to our web page, you can it pops you can pop up or it shows the gateway immediately, and you can go there. If you have more technical questions, you can always email to us at support. And for pricing and availability, send them to sales or directly to your sales representative. I see one more question, multiple IPs. So indirectly, it's supported by the one-to-one mapping. So if you have the one-to-one NET, so you have more than one IP address, you can just take the second IP address and map it one-to-one to an internal server IP address. yeah, thank you for your attention. And like I said, if you have any, if you think of any additional questions, just drop me an email or call me, whatever. Thank you very much.